Come on, somebody. I'm Caldwell. He's Caleb. We're in the same location. For the first time, we are here together on the podcast. Welcome to episode 6. We're happy to have you guys here again for another episode. We got a great episode in store for you guys, including a spontaneous special guest coming on. Touch on that in just a second. In Sports and Scripture today, we're talking about a biblical worldview of anger and self-control and how that plays itself out in sports, what the Bible has to say about that. And that was live. I am talking about a game, an NFL game that I watched that involved my team against my brother's team. Enough said. Stay tuned for that. That should be fun. And then double dipping is our spontaneous special guest, Caleb. And who is it?
The spontaneous special guest is actually my dad. He's coming on with a hot take of his own. He'll just be in here for double dipping, and then we'll all give our hot takes. Then from there, we're moving on to Beyond the Numbers, and I'll talk about football again and a QB/passing stat. And then we're going to close it out with a high five, and we'll give our top 5 NBA players right now going into the bubble in Orlando.
So we're looking forward to it, and we're excited for another episode. Finally in the same location. This is going to be a great episode. It's time to talk all things sports from a Christ Center Bible saturated perspective. Let's roll.
Welcome to Sports and Scripture, and today we're going to be talking about something that unfortunately actually is very common in sports, and that is anger and kind of self-control, how those two things work together. So it's very clear if you watch sports consistently that outbursts of anger are very common in pro sports, in all levels of sports, even down to junior high school basketball. I mean,
unfortunately.
Yeah, it's all levels of sports, and that's because humans are sinful at all ages.
Yeah.
So now I wanted to just start us off and remind that the Bible says that anger is not necessarily sinful in and of itself. In fact, the Bible says that God is a God of anger, and that anger is one of his attributes, and we should desire to be like God. And so there's a certain type of anger that as believers we should have. And that is being angry about the things that God is angry about. So angry about sin, things that violate his holy character. So I wanted to start off by saying that not all anger is sinful, and there is good anger. It says, be angry and do not sin. However, when you think about sports and the most common type of human anger and outbursts, it is very clearly not an anger that is jealous for the things God is jealous for, but rather it's an anger of pride and a jealousy for your own glory or the player's own whatever's going on. It's a pride issue. And so I wanted to go to James real quick. James in chapter 1 talks about anger.
As always, we encourage you guys to have your Bibles out if you have it on you. But if you're listening, just listen to the Word of God that's being read as we value it for each discussion.
Yeah. So verse 19, it says, "But everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God." So I think that's just a great verse to have in perspective, especially even as Christians. We can be tempted to be angry when we are competing in any level of sports. And so that's a great verse, a reminder that the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God. So there's kind of that two sides. There's the anger of God, which we should desire to have, or the anger of man. And so one of the places I just wanted to go is in Proverbs, just bounce around real quick here. Proverbs 16, verse 32, I think it's interesting. It says, he who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who captures a city. So I think that's also really interesting as you think about with sports and being angry, like you think of just different things that would happen, being called out at the plate, and you think you were safe, and then you get angry. You think, I it's self. You think I deserve to be safe, or even or you think, I was safe, and so I deserve to be treated this certain way because I'm this important. You think he who is slow to anger is better than the mighty. And it's the ultimate. I think it's a great sign of humility, being slow to anger. So just to the other part of that then is, and he who rules his spirit than he who captures a city. So it's interesting. It makes a parallel of slow to anger and ruling your spirit. So being able to control your temper is self-control. It's having a rule over your spirit. And so that takes me to the last place I wanted to go, which is in Galatians 5. And so Galatians 5, just talking about the deeds of the flesh versus the deeds of the spirit. And that is, for the unbeliever, you can't have control over your spirit in that way, because your natural man is of self-love. It says, now the deeds, in verse 19, now the deeds of the flesh are evident, which are immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmities, strife, jealousy, outbursts of anger. These are all things that are deeds of the flesh and are so common, unfortunately, in sports. So how would one fix an anger problem? Well, first of all, you can't fix your own anger problem. The Lord has to, because it says the fruit, and it says those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. Those are characteristics of an unbeliever, but rather the fruit of the Spirit of the one who abides in Christ is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Now those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Just kind of want to leave you with that too, that sinful habits, even if you had a habit of being angry, it's something that can only be cultivated through the Spirit, not through yourself, but it's only something that the Lord can produce through being a child of His and repenting of your sin. That's the only way to remove yourself, to remove that problem, is through the Lord. So I don't know. Do you have more thoughts on that, AJ?
Good thoughts. Yeah. No, I love the fact that you brought up the ruling your spirit idea. I don't think we talked a lot about the fact that any problem, whether it be an anger issue, whether it be a issue of gluttony, whether it be just any issue, sinful issue you can think of, you have to have rule over that. You can't do that on your own.
What's really interesting to cut you off is that too, these athletes in other areas have great rule over their bodies.
Yep. I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Stole his thunder.
No, yeah. No,
but it's the spiritual issues that are to the Lord.
Yeah. No, I think that is so crucial when we're talking about just life in general, but especially when we apply to sports. And I love that you just touched on that. The anger, as Caleb said, is very commonplace in sports today. And unfortunately, that's the case. It's very common. You're only as good of a player as how angry you get about losing, how angry you get before a competitive event, if you have that fire, so to speak, that people talk about. And that fire comes out in different ways, and it's just a part of the game if it comes out in different ways, according to many athletes and many coaches and many, even Hall of Famers, that I was only the player. I mean, just even thinking about The Last Dance. Michael Jordan, who's one of the greatest players, if not the greatest player of all time, even were spoken of by teammates as saying he was a very intimidating guy and he was tough to be around sometimes. What kind of reputation do we want to, and I'll touch on that in a second, but what kind of reputation do we want to have in that case? But the point that Caleb brought up that I want to make is that it's shunned and disciplined when these anger problems come out off the field, but for some reason it's okay when it's on the field of play. We think about the domestic violence cases. We think about the issues of robbery, or just different things that players get involved in. That goes on off the field. It's like, how dare you do that?
Yeah.
And yet when a manager gets ejected, when a star player gets in a scuffle with his head coach, when people are requesting trades and bad-mouthing their former teams, we've seen a lot of that recently, all of a sudden it's okay and it's just a part of the game. Yeah. That does not line up. It does not line up with the Word of God. And that's where I want to turn now. If we go to Ephesians chapter 4, I think there's some helpful things. Caleb brought up some great verses as well that I was thinking of and that were brought to mind. But Ephesians 4, verse 26, and then also verse 32, I think are very helpful. Ephesians 4:26 says, "Be angry and do not sin." And Caleb mentioned that there are things that we should be angry about, and those are things that God is angry about, namely sin and wickedness. That is the exception. We think about the term righteous anger. When Jesus overturned the tables, it wasn't just because Jesus was, wanting to assert his dominance. It was because they were in his house, his temple. He was angry because they were idolizing money and people and taking advantage of people more than the holy God in his temple. Those are the things we need to be angry about. So it says, "Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger." That is such a key point that is not talked about in sports. If you have a problem with somebody, one, you should do it in private. So many things about these things are public. Way too many are public things. Do it in private, which again there is you can only do to a point with our social media age, but it can still be done. And people don't think about that enough as they should. But be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Meaning, don't allow these things to fester for so long that it boils over into you doing something where you'll regret it. Deal with the issues in a way that is healthy, that is profitable for each other. And as Caleb said, the only way you can do that well is if you're a believer. We talked about reconciliation last week and how there can be reconciliation, quote unquote, with sports and athletes and things like that. But it's only to a point if you're an unbeliever. Because those issues are only going to expose themselves again if you think that you can do this on your own. And you think that you can bring about these issues and you can defeat these things and you can just be a better person and the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. I mean, we talk about the issues of the heart and the things we should be angry about. The thing we should be angry about, one, is the sinfulness of our own hearts. We should fight against sin. That's one of the things we should be incredibly angry about. And so lastly, one thing I want to touch on is in Colossians 3, which I think then touches on the character of God as well. But in Colossians 3, verses 5 through 8, it brings to mind this idea of who we once were if we're believers and who we are now. Colossians 3, verse 5 says, "Put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you, sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. On account of these things, the wrath of God is coming." And let me just pause there for a second. The wrath of God is coming on every angry, unrepentant heart. That just needs to be said. It's not a popular thing to say, but if you are unrepentant, your unrepentant heart is hostile, the Bible says, towards God. And every angry, unrepentant heart in that way, the wrath of God in its full effect will come upon them on Judgment Day. And so that's where the gospel comes in that we continue to want to preach of repent and believe the things that we're saying, the gospel that the word of God proclaims. The wrath of God is coming upon those who do not submit to those things, who do not submit their lives to God. Verse 7 says, "In these you too once walked when you were living in them, but now you must put them all away." And what's the first thing on that list? Anger. Anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene talk from your mouth. Now we can get into all these semantics about why anger was listed first or what Paul was thinking of when he put anger first. But I think there's a point why Paul's putting that, and it's because of what the wrath of God means. Like Caleb said, God is angry at sin. God is going to be angry at those, and his wrath is going to be exposed towards those who are unrepentant. So our sinful avenues of anger, our sinful reactions of anger need to be put away. That needs to be submitted and repented of. Because the character of God actually, even though God is a wrathful God, and we talk a lot about that, character of God is also that he's slow to anger. He's abounding in loving kindness, abounding in faithfulness. If you're an unbeliever watching this or listening to this, we don't want you to think that God is just this very thumb on you type of God. This God is also a faithful God who hears the prayers of those who know him and wants you, is holding out an outstretched hand and telling you to come to him, for his yoke is easy, his burden is light. And that comes through the character of Christ, who exhibited all these things. Exhibited a passion of righteous anger and overturning the tables, and yet also washed his disciples' feet. Did both of them. So there's a lot to be said in that, much more to be said. And that's why we always like to start the podcast with these types of discussions. So brother, thankful for your words as always. Good discussion. Please leave in the comments things you guys want us to talk about in sports and scripture as well. We want to talk about the things of the Lord. We want to hear what's on your guys' hearts and how we can encourage you guys. I hope that was encouraging. Now we're going to transition into the rest of our podcast and into my segment, That Was Live. Welcome back to That Was Live as I retell the joys and sorrows of being a sports fan and the different things I've experienced through following my teams and just watching sports, which, by the way, are back in 10 days, opening day of baseball and then basketball. Cannot wait to have more live reactions of things. I'm going to tell the story today of the Broncos and Chiefs overtime game from 2016. If you guys are wondering what that game was, that was the game-winning field goal off the crossbar to win the game in overtime with like 5 seconds left. Crazy, crazy game. It was a lot of fun. Here's the story of what I saw live and everything that transpired up until that point. I'm in my house in California, so a lot of these things are when I lived in California, in junior high and high school and things like that. And the Broncos and Chiefs are getting ready to play in Sunday Night Football. Here is one of the big kickers of this story. I am a diehard Chiefs fan. My brother, Zach, who I'll give a shout out to, hopefully we'll have you on the podcast soon, buddy. He is a huge Broncos fan. So if you can imagine, the tension's already starting to build. The rest of our family, we don't really have a team we cheer for, and so they just kind of sit back and watch me and Zach go at it when our teams play each other. So the Broncos and Chiefs are ready to play Sunday Night Football. And then, once the game starts, we have another guest come in who is the small group leader of my small group at church. And so he's here watching the game with us. And he's having to pick sides and try to not be mean towards Zach because he's cheering for the Chiefs. And it's all this stuff is transpiring. And Tyreek Hill had his coming out party in this game. I don't know if you remember this. Tyreek Hill had a kick return for a touchdown after a safety. Tyreek Hill had a rushing touchdown in the second half. And he caught the game-tying pass to tie the game to send it into overtime. Here was what happened before then. The Chiefs were down 8 points with 2 minutes left. Alex Smith, game manager, game check down man himself, who I will not speak anymore of. He's dead to me. Alex Smith was our quarterback. And God love him because he got us the win. But again, he's dead to me. The Chiefs were down 8 points with 2 minutes left because we zero blitzed the Broncos on a third down play and threw the ball over the top, and our quarterback looked like he was blind. And he was like, where's the ball? It was behind him. Guy ran for a touchdown. So it's 24-16, and we have to go down the field. And my heart is pounding for this simple reason, ladies and gentlemen. My brother is standing 5 feet away from me, and I cannot allow my team to lose to my brother's team. I can't let it happen. There's no way I can allow Zach to hold this over me with my small group leader there. There's no way I can allow this to happen. Not with my family there. The Chiefs cannot do me wrong this time. And Alex Smith, somehow, some way, drives the Chiefs down the field to set up a 4th and 10, where he throws it to guess who? None other than Tyreek Hill, who, by the way, was not a great receiver at that point, but had a coming out party this day. Caught the ball for a 1st and goal down to the 5-yard line. So there's 10 seconds left. And Patrick Mahomes. See, I've already moved on. I've moved on, everyone. Alex Smith throws it to Tyreek Hill at the goal line, and he kind of catches it and his knee hits the ground. So the play continues to go, and there's 5 seconds left, and it dwindles down all the way down to 1 second before they do the booth review. So Zach is losing his mind thinking that the Broncos have won the game. They finally beat the Chiefs. Everything is over. Booth review reveals Tyreek Hill actually did not have control of the ball until he was in the end zone. Praise the Lord that he didn't because he was in for a touchdown. Ties the game. So now we're into overtime. So my small group leader's there. Zach's there. My dad's chilling on the couch just watching all this unfold. And the Broncos kick a field goal to take the lead. So the Chiefs have a chance to go down the field. And we do 3 and out. I'm like, Alex Smith, you're going to do me wrong. Again, Broncos go down the field. They punt. We punt. All the way down to 2 minutes left. And thank goodness Gary Kubiak and the Broncos threw this game in the trash can because a 62-yard field goal was shanked like a duck got shot out of the sky and gave the Chiefs the ball on the Broncos side of the field, went down the field for a 34-yard field goal. 34-yard field goal, Caleb, inside of 40 yards. Easy kick for an NFL kicker. And Cairo Santos, like something something that I was going to have a nightmare of, kicks the ball and it is going directly towards this upright. The game is tied. Now keep in mind, if Cairo Santos misses this kick, the game ends in a tie, which is one of the stupidest rules in the history of the NFL, that if the game is still tied for overtime, it ends in a tie. I do not understand that. I will have to talk about that some other time. But this ball is going towards this upright. And I'm like, he's about to hit the upright and tie the game in a game that has literally almost given me a heart attack. And by some miracle, hits the inside of the upright and goes through the upright for a game-winning field goal. And I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe I fell to my knees and was just exuberant in my joy that my team would not lose to Zach's team. Zach, I know you got other thoughts on that because Iowa football always does Iowa State wrong every single year. But I got you that time, buddy. I got you that time. And I'm going to tell another story soon about another time my team got you. We're going to have him on the podcast soon. Had to give a shout out to him. But that was live when I saw that. And I love those reactions. I love having more reactions soon. Baseball's coming back in 10 days. Padres, Cardinals, all the other teams in the MLB. The bubble in the NBA, which is just a crazy thing to think about. They're all in the same place right now, basically living together like college roommates. Sports is crazy right now. The world is crazy right now. But that story was worth it. From 2016, Caio Santos, little dude from the I guess it's from Mexico or something. Game-winning field goal off the upright. There you go. That was live. Now we are going to go into something that was just supposed to be double dipping. And it's going to turn to triple dipping in a matter of moments. Because coming up next, Mr. Waymeyer, Caleb's dad, is joining us for double dipping. Stay tuned. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Double Dippin'. Back in the day, Caleb and I hit back-to-back doubles as teammates, and now we're going to give back-to-back hot takes. But once again, we're not only giving back-to-back, but we're giving back-to-back-to-back hot takes. So we got something special coming on, Caleb.
We have a surprise appearance, last-second
late
appearance.
edition.
And I'm really excited for this because it is none other than my own dad, Mr. Waymeyer. Dad, how are you doing?
Where is he? There he is.
Hey, guys. Hey, this is a thrill and honor. I just want to say, long-time listener. I've been with you guys since the very first episode, way back to last month, I suppose it was.
Yeah.
But it's a thrill to be a guest on the show. It's surreal.
We appreciate you coming on. One thing we like to do before we get into the most important stuff of the sports talk is kind of hear from our special guests, who they are, kind of what they do. So kind of give us a little bit about yourself for people that may not know, kind of what you do for a living and things like that.
Yes, well, I serve as an associate pastor at Grace Emmanuel Bible Church here in Jupiter, Florida, and teach Greek and theology. We have a seminary called the Expositor Seminary where we train men for ministry. My wife, Julie, and I have been married for 25 years. We have 5 children. Caleb is the second born. I've been his father for his entire life, so we've known each other a long time. And as you can tell from the shirts, we are pretty serious Green Bay Packers.
I can't tell by your shirt. I thought it was just a Nike shirt.
He's got a throwback.
You did enlarge the font on that shirt a little bit.
I'm sure all 10 of our listeners are pumped to
have there you go
as well.
When you're as talented as the Packers, you don't need to scream Packers. You just let your play on the field do the
thing. Super Bowl champs. All right.
I noticed
Hey, by the way, congrats on your first Super Bowl. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, we're starting a new dynasty. So
first Super Bowl victory, I should say. You were in the Super Bowl one other time, weren't you?
Next couple of years.
Yeah, now their championship room has one thing right in the middle of it. Beforehand, they just had the door locked.
That's all right. Yeah. There's more access to it because everyone will be talking about us for the next 10 years. That's okay. We're gonna jump right in. We're gonna allow the special guest to have first dibs, so to speak. We're thinking about making T-shirts of kind of chips dipping in. We want people to kind of get a feel of what we do here on this show. So, Mr. Waymeyer, if you will, you've been hyping this up really all week. I've been here for 2 days, and all I hear about is this hot take that you want to share with the world. Take the first dip here.
Absolutely. Well, seriously, it's great to be with you. This hot take is going to take us back 5 years in time to February 1st, 2015. And you may not remember this, but the 2 of you gentlemen were sitting on the couch to my right as the 3 of us and a room full of others watched Super Bowl 49. Now, as you recall, at the very end of this Super Bowl, Seahawks versus the Patriots, Russell Wilson threw an interception at the very end of the game to lose the game. Now, after the game, in fact, moments after the play, remember Chris Collinsworth was outraged. The consensus around the internet, all commentators, in fact, Deion Sanders on the NFL Network afterwards said it was the worst call in Super Bowl history. And commentator after commentator, player after player said it was the dump. You had Marshawn Lynch, beast mode in the backfield. He'd rush for over 100 yards, hand the ball to Marshawn, plunges in, scores the touchdown. The Seahawks win. Stupid call, coach. So my hot take is this, is the Seahawks were absolutely right to throw the ball on that play. Now, I told Caleb ahead of time, my goal was to cause AJ to fall out of his chair. I'll take the forehead on the table as a close second. They were absolutely right. So you're stunned. Shall I go on? Let me just predict right now. In a few moments, you'll start to scratch your chin a little bit and see the reason. Are you ready?
Oh man,
For those of you guys listening, by the way, that's the first time Caleb and I have actually just been so stunned silent. We don't even have a reaction. That was all just body language that Caleb and I responded to. But continue, yeah.
I don't know if I can. We'll see.
All right, so let me tell you. I'm going to give you 2 reasons why it was absolutely the right. Now, just to be clear, when I say they were absolutely right to throw the ball, I'm not saying that specific play call. I'm not saying they should have thrown a slant, and I'll get to that in a moment. But they were absolutely right to throw the ball. And again, the consensus was they had to run the ball. So I'm going to give you 2 reasons why. But first, is my guiding philosophy is this. It's easy to look back and say because it was intercepted by Malcolm Butler that it was a bad play call. But you have to go with what you know at the time. It's all about probabilities. There are no guarantees in sports. It's all about giving yourself the best chance to win. So first reason is the clock. Now, you probably don't remember the context, but I'll set it up for you. The Seahawks were down by 4, okay? They were down 28-24, so they're down by 4. It's 2nd and goal from the 1-yard line, and they snap the ball with 25 seconds left, and they have 1 timeout, okay? So if you put all that together, you have 3 plays to score a touchdown. Okay, it's 2nd down and you're losing by 4. You have 3 plays to score a touchdown. Okay, so you have to think in terms of what gives you the best chance over the course of those 3 plays to score a touchdown. Now think about the 2 possibilities. If you run on 2nd down, which is what everyone said they should have done, if you run on 2nd down and you get stopped, 2 things are undoubtedly true. Okay, so AJ's removed himself from the chair because he thinks it's outlandish that Marshawn Lynch would get stopped.
They were a yard out. They were a yard.
Listen.
1 yard.
So let me ask you this. Let's put a little chink in the armor of your certainty here, AJ. 5 times that season, Marshawn Lynch had run the ball from the 1-yard line. How many times did he score? Sounds like you would say 5.
At least 4.
4? No. Lower. Keep going.
3?
No. Lower. Keep going.
1?
1. Yeah. So it's anyway. Let me finish my argument. The point is this: is that it's not an absolute guarantee. Okay. So if you run on 2nd down and you're stopped, 2 things are true, and I think you would agree. First of all, you have to call a timeout right away, because if you run the ball, snap the ball 25 seconds, you get stopped on 2nd down, you got about 20 seconds. You have to call timeout. And secondly, you have to pass on the next play, because now you're 3rd and goal from the 1 with 20 seconds and no timeouts. Okay. Right. You have to pass on 3rd down, and they absolutely know it. Okay. They know you have to pass. But think about this. If you pass, now the only killer outcome is if you throw an interception, and that's what happened. But I'm just saying you can see that in retrospect. If you pass incomplete on 2nd down, the clock stops on its own with 20 seconds left. Now it's 3rd down, and you're free to either run or pass. You can run, because if you don't make it, you can call timeout. If you pass and you don't make it, it's incomplete, and you still have your timeout. Then, if you're stopped on third down, whether you run or pass on second, you're still free to run or pass on fourth down. So the point is this: by passing on second down, all 3 plays, again, the goal is to score a touchdown in one of 3 plays. All 3 plays that you keep the defense guessing. So that's the first, and I can unpack that for you if you want, but that's the first reason, is the clock in the game situation. The second reason, and the two of these go hand in hand, is the matchup on that play. If you go back and you just forget about, wow, I picked the ball off, should have run the ball. The matchup was this: the Seahawks had a pass unit on the field. They had 3 receivers on the field. They weren't coming off a timeout, so they didn't have opportunity to sub guys out. They had a pass unit on the field. The Patriots not only had a goal line unit on the field, but they also, the defense that they set up, they had 8 defenders in the box versus 6 blockers. So if you look at a snapshot, you can find one online, I'm sure. You look at a snapshot from the end zone, you can see 6 blockers and 8 defenders. So the Patriots were supremely positioned to stop the run on that play. So to summarize, they should have thrown the ball. First reason, it gives you flexibility to run on third and fourth if you want. And secondly, the matchup strongly favors throwing the ball. The point being this: if you're saying it's an absolute given that Marshawn Lynch runs the ball in, well, you still have third and fourth down to do it. You have 3 plays, and you put yourself in a better position. Again, it's all about probabilities to be successful on those 3 plays. The only thing that could have gone wrong is the thing that did go wrong, which is why I would say this, and I would leave this to maybe you guys, is would there be a better pass play to have called? Was that a high-risk play? I don't think I know football well enough to know for sure. I can't recall a little slant like that at the goal line getting picked off very often, but maybe guys who know football well would say, well, yes, you should have passed, but maybe not that particular play. That's too risky, kind of throwing it into the midst of so much of the defense. That's up for debate. What's not up for debate is that they should have passed, because that was absolutely the right call.
You want to go ahead? Please tell me you don't agree.
AJ needs time to think of reasons why that doesn't make sense. His emotions.
No, I don't want to give Caleb a chance. I've already outburst.
Well, my biggest argument against it, and it is a convincing argument, and I think we've talked about it a little bit in the past, and I see the argument. My side, and one thing I'd be interested to know, is did the Patriots change any personnel for that last play? Because if I recall right, the reason I lean towards run is the fact that he had just been running the ball the entire drive. Like the 2 plays before it's like 6-yard run, 5-yard run, 6-yard run, and just wearing down the defense just to keep the momentum pushing it in. Now, and you just eliminate, like in my mind, I'd want to see if, how the personnel was different from the previous plays, because I think even the play directly before was like a 7-yard run. And I had, watching it, was the impression of there's literally nothing they can do to stop him right now. So that's the only argument I've had, is just throwing, like, you have the defense kind of on their heels. I see what you're saying, and I don't necessarily disagree, though. That's the argument I'd have against it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's probably that's probably the strongest argument against it. The previous play, he had run. They were first and goal from the 5, and he had run 4 yards to the 1, and so just the momentum. So yeah, I think that's probably the strongest argument. I do think. I don't like either the Patriots or the Seahawks. Caleb, if you remember, I referred to it as the beast versus the false prophet. Who do you root for? But you have to admit, Bill Belichick not calling timeout, because they actually ran the first and goal from the 5 with about 51 seconds left, and they get to the 1. and you're thinking Belichick's going to call a timeout, but he just kind of lets the clock run. So no personnel switched out. And, so I think that's a fair argument. You could make the argument. Sometimes you can set aside the numbers and the statistics and the probabilities and just say, hey, all the metrics aside, in the ebb and flow of the game and the momentum of the game, you just pound the rock. You got them on their heels. I do think statistically, probability-wise, if you look at their defense, they were ready for the run. And I don't know that if you pass the ball incomplete, and I would have told Russell Wilson, hey, look, drop back, and if you have the guy wide open, put it in his hands. If not, throw it into the fifth row, and don't take a chance. And then you can pound the rock twice. You have third down and fourth down. If Marshawn Lynch will definitely get in the end zone from a second and goal,
that was what I was going to ask.
Then third and fourth and goal, it seems like between the two of those plays, he can make it.
So you believe that at some point they should have run the ball, though?
Yeah, assuming they didn't make, yeah, absolutely.
You're saying that if all else failed, you agree that Marshawn Lynch gets the ball.
Yeah, in fact, I think what Pete Carroll said afterward, and this doesn't quite work, but he said this: if you leave open the flexibility, you can't run the ball 3 times. You can only run it twice at most.
With the clock, right? Yeah.
So I would have passed the ball, and then I probably would have run. Again, I don't know football well enough do you call an audible, you see something at the line, but I just know that the way that I wouldn't dispute that. I'm just looking at it like this. We've got 3 plays to get in. Now, again, turnovers, the one thing that's going to kill you. Turnover, or if Russell Wilson drops back and scrambles for 25 seconds and runs off the clock.
Well, I think they were trying to catch the Patriots off guard, which is smart. But at the same time, in trying to catch them off guard, it's also the Super Bowl. Like, it's not just like it's a regular season game where it's like you're trying to trick them. It's like this is one play to win the title, and you're not getting it to the guy who basically got you there. Like Marshawn Lynch had already had a reputation at that point where it's like, even if ever it's to the equivalent where I think of like Michael Jordan in a last-second situation, where it's like you know where the ball's going, it's going there anyways. He's probably going to hit the shot. Or Larry Bird when he's got position on somebody. I would think in that situation, and I agree with you that at some point they should have run the ball anyways, and that passing the ball was like kind of a counterattack to that to kind of catch everybody off guard. But I would argue that even if it was the instance where you can talk about the personnel where they knew they were preparing for them to run, you give the ball to Marshawn Lynch anyways, because he's gotten you there, and you said the 1 for 5 thing, which I didn't realize. But at the same time, like, it's one play. Like, at that point, I think you throw out all statistics and you just say, Marshawn Lynch, get in the end zone.
But again, if he doesn't, though, now you have to pass, and they know
you
it.
call the timeout, and then you pass, which, like, at that point, like, they know you're passing, you know you're passing. Russell Wilson's a playmaker. Like, I trust him to make a play from 1 yard out. Like, he can scramble and get into the end zone. Like, it's like, when you're pushed back that far, it's different than it being like on the 10-yard line.
Yeah, well, I agree, but what you've just said actually supports that a pass play should have worked just fine on second down. Again, it's the specific pass play.
Yeah.
Like, I would say this. Let me ask you guys this, and I don't know what I would have said in response, but let's pretend Russell Wilson on second and goal drops back, throws the ball to a receiver, touchdown, or Seahawks win. Would you be saying, oh, my goodness, I can't believe they threw the ball? What were they thinking?
I would, yeah. I would have been shocked if they threw the ball and it was.
Well, I think, to your point, I think imagine they ran the ball, and whatever the chances of this were, again, 1 for 5 during the season, but obviously having more success against the Patriots in the game. If they do run it and get stopped, and then they have to pass, how many people would afterwards be saying, like, looking back at this, they should have thrown it. And then, like, it's so much, like you said, it is easier once the one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't in the moment. In fact, in the moment, if you guys remember, you guys jumped off the couch. and you were jumping around, and I literally, and you were yelling so loud, I couldn't either see because you were in the way or hear what was going on. So it was literally about 20 seconds after the play that I found out what had happened. But in the moment, I wasn't thinking it was foolish. I just thought about it afterward, and because they were so lambasted, and I just remember thinking, well, let me just kind of play this out. And I was teaching at the Master's Seminary at the time. In my Tuesday morning Greek class, I laid all this out on the whiteboard with the class. And so what I didn't know at the time was, and I was just playing with the timeouts and the clock. What I didn't realize at the time is that the way the defense was set up was so favorable to the pass. Maybe, AJ, tell me this. Maybe the problem was this. So if you think they have 8 in the box. In fact, let me see if this will work. See if you can. I printed this up to show you guys. Is that? You
got a visual.
Yeah, a little higher.
We got a visual on the camera for listeners.
So I just wonder if you have 8 in the box and they're all ready for the run. You have 3 wide receivers. So you basically have each of the wide receivers are just man to man. I mean, there's no double coverage. And there's no roaming. I mean, I guess there's a safety in the middle, but he's playing the run. So maybe the pass, but just don't slant in toward all the defense. Maybe move out. But yeah, I mean, it's hopefully it's at least more compelling than when your forehead was resting upon the table.
Yeah, I'm just glad that you admitted that you would run the ball with Marshawn Lynch still at some point. Because what I thought when you originally said that was they made the right decision to throw the ball, period. And I'm thinking you're out of your mind.
On that play.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I would stand by that on that play. I wouldn't, as a coach, I wouldn't be able to break all this down quickly in the moment in my mind. But if I could pause it and stop and think about it, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
I would, because you said, well, if they run the ball, they have to pass on 3rd down. You said, well, Russell Wilson's a playmaker. He could. Well, the same thing would apply to 2nd down. In other words, they're not really lessening their chances by passing on 2nd down, unless the momentum. And I don't think it was. They didn't hurry up the next play where they. There was 30 seconds went off the clock. Everyone was set. They weren't catching them off guard. But maybe
Yeah, I think the question is then who did you trust more on the Seahawks at that point? Russell Wilson or Marshawn Lynch from that spot in the field? Like, what's first priority?
Yeah, I don't know, but if you don't have to pick between them, I'm saying with what I'm saying is if you just look at it in 3 plays, what gives you the greatest probability each play? Think of it as statistically. Play number 1, they're expecting the run, they're playing the run, they're matched up for the run. What's the greater probability? The pass. The next 3rd down, if you don't make it with the pass, what gives you the greater probability? If they know you have to pass, or if they don't know whether you're going to pass or run. Now, 4th down really is a wild card because you can pass or run either scenario on 4th down because it doesn't matter. The game's going to be over after that play. But yeah, I don't know. To answer your question, I don't trust any of the Seahawks.
That's coming as a Packers fan more than anything, let's be honest.
It's sad to say I was rooting for the Patriots that Super Bowl, but
my goodness,
more rooting against the Seahawks.
I didn't know who to cheer for. I was in your guys' house who were Packer fans, so I felt kind of weird like cheering for anybody. But I hated the Patriots, but I couldn't cheer for the Seahawks. So I was just like, football!
I thought it was the perfect ending because you got to see Russell Wilson throw away a Super Bowl. And you got to see the Patriots sort of win a Super Bowl, but with this massive asterisk of, well, only because the Seahawks blew it. So it was as close, since they don't allow ties in the Super Bowl, is as close as a success from a Packer fan's perspective.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, man.
Okay, so here's mine. I'll take a second dip here. This is my hot take. It's also football related, and it has to do with this year. And a certain team that pretty much was a laughing stock the past couple of years. That's the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals are going to make some noise this year. Okay? Now keep in mind, I'm not crazy. AFC North has the Baltimore Ravens in it. So the Baltimore Ravens are going to win the division. However, Caleb's already pulling up stats on the Bengals. However, Cincinnati Bengals are going to not only push the Browns and the Steelers, they're going to get second in the division. Okay? The Cincinnati Bengals are going to get second in the AFC North, and here's why. One, Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, Heisman Trophy winner from LSU, is going to play out of his mind this year. Is he going to be a top 10 quarterback by the end of the year? Probably not. But he's going to be very good this year. Very good. Probably rookie of the year. Joe Mixon is their running back. He is one of the most underrated running backs in the league, I think. He's a great fantasy player to play fantasy football. I mean, gets you a lot of points. More than anything, he's a consistent runner. Consistent running back. Very, very solid running back. AJ Green plays for the Bengals. He didn't play at all last year pretty much because of his injuries. And he also had Andy Dalton as his quarterback. So even when he did play, he didn't play because Andy Dalton was terrible. AJ Green is also on the Bengals. Those three guys, that trio. Then you add in John Ross, who ran a 4.1 40. One of the fastest players in the league. Not faster than Tyreek Hill. I'm going to watch him out there.
Who ran a 4.1?
4.1. John Ross ran a 4.1 40 or 4.2. It was 4.1 or 4.2. One of the fastest 40 times in NFL history. John Ross, Tyler Boyd, who's also a very good role receiver in the NFL on the Bengals, kind of to the equivalent of what would be a good equivalent for him? Maybe like a Cole Beasley on the Cowboys, kind of his role he played. He wasn't the best receiver, but was consistent. Kind of like a Cole Beasley on the Cowboys or a Wes Welker on the Patriots. Kind of fitting in his role there. And then you throw in their defensive line. Now, the Bengals defense is not great yet. They still are a couple years off. But Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlap are both on their defensive line. Very good players, very well-known names as pass rushers in the league. Carlos Dunlap especially. I think he was on either the Vikings or the Lions before he got traded. So he's moving up in his career, in his career of sacking the quarterback, pretty much. And so I think they're going to win second place in the division. I also think they're going to make the wild card in the AFC playoffs. Okay? And so the Bengals are going to make a lot more noise than people think, and I truly believe it more than anything is because of Joe Burrow and the way he's going to play against the division specifically.
Okay.
Not beating the Ravens, but I think they will split the Browns and they will split the Steelers, and they will do very well outside the division. They'll get swept by the Ravens.
So you named all these great players, or good players.
Good players.
That the Bengals
Nobody's
have.
great yet, but
These good players went 2-14 last year.
with Andy Dalton as their quarterback.
So you said Joe Burrow will not be a top 10 quarterback.
Probably not. I said it's really tough because he hasn't played a single snap in the NFL.
So let's say Andy Dalton is a bottom 5 quarterback. Now, which do you think he's bottom 5?
Yes, Andy Dalton. He's
if they
out of the top 20.
If they go from a bad quarterback to a above average quarterback, but probably not top 10, they suddenly go from 2-14 to the wild card.
Think about their weapons that they have.
But their weapons went 2-14.
No, but no one knows about those guys because Andy Dalton was their quarterback and Marvin Lewis was their coach. Dude, last year was the first time they had a rookie head coach for the first time in 16 years.
Yeah, you're right.
16. Before that, Marvin Lewis had coached the Bengals to 0 playoff victories. 0. With Andy Dalton as his quarterback, by the way. Think about the Reeds and Mahomes, the Rodgers and LaFleurs now, the Brady and Belichick kind of thing. Dalton and Marvin Lewis are one of the most laughingstock tandems in the history of the NFL. 0 playoff wins, Caleb, in 16 years. He made the playoffs 8 times.
Yeah, so they've been terrible. And now one player who's not even going to be top 10 in his position.
He's going to be top 12? He'll be right outside the top 10.
Think
about the top 10 quarterbacks in the league.
So they're going to win, Joe Burrow, a not top 10 quarterback.
They'll win 9 games, 9 or 10 games.
Is going to push them an additional 7 or 8 wins. I don't know. Do you have any comments on this, Dad?
Well, I was going to ask you, AJ, how many, you just answered it, how many wins do you think it's going to take to get a wild card? Because I'm thinking the same thing. I don't know too much about the Bengals.
There's not
perhaps for obvious reasons. But, yeah, that's my same question. First of all, I was going to ask you, how well do you think Joe Burrow will play? It's very rare, even for a first.
Oh, go ahead.
It's very rare for a top pick quarterback in his rookie season to do well. So if you're telling me he's not going to be the top 10, I can accept that. In fact, I might insist upon it. So yeah, I'm wondering the same thing: is how someone who's in the middle of the pack, who's the 12th, 15th best quarterback in the league, adds an additional 7 or 8 wins to a team.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned AC Green. How many games did he play last year? Oh, what did I say?
AJ, you said AC Green.
Oh.
Pretty sure
how many games?
Music artist. Or something like
how many games did he play last year?
I need to fact check that. He had a foot injury for a couple months, so he played maybe 6 games.
Because the question I'm asking myself, if I were a Bengals fan, is what's different this year from last? And so Green and Burrow, but Green not the whole year, just part of it. So I don't know. I would say let's just put it this way: if they were to, what's the answer?
He played 9 games.
Played 9 games. So
at best went 2-7.
But keep in mind, he had a foot injury, came back, played a couple of games, and then re-aggravated it. So he wasn't even. So it's really 6 games of.
Would you say you're confident of the whole concept of a hot take? Sometimes it's fun to have an opinion that's kind of controversial. Would you say you're confident of that?
Confident of what?
The Bengals making the playoffs?
Are the Bengals making the playoffs? I think that a lot of people discredit how good A.J. Green and Joe Mixon and the other receivers are simply because of Andy Dalton. So I'm confident of the fact that they will push the Browns and the Steelers to the brink. It's too early to tell to say, like, yes, the Bengals will be a wild card team. I'm just spicing it up and saying that I think that with the talent that Joe Burrow plays like he's supposed to play, like doesn't get injured or anything like that, and steps into his role in a way, not like a Patrick Mahomes, which will never happen again, but in a lesser way of stepping in and taking the lead by storm, I think they can win 8, 9, even 10 games.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, just to be transparent, I would say your argument reminds me of an optimistic Bengals fan who's trying to find a path toward what he would really like to see happen. I'm not saying it won't happen. No, that's what I mean is the substance of the argument. It sounds like there's some bias and some optimism built in. But you may be right. I think if Burrow was the 18th best quarterback next year, the Bengals would high five each other in the.
Where do you think? How do you think he'll do? Let me just ask that.
I don't know. I don't. Number one, I'm not a college football fan.
Of course you're not.
Pro sports.
People, please help the Waymeyer family. They need to stop hating on college.
College. My long-standing mantra is
I don't like
is. I guess we need college football because you need to get the players from somewhere. But other than that, I have no use for it.
That is the blasphemous statement I've ever heard.
The players come from somewhere. That is true. So out there in college football.
So to answer your question, I don't know, but I did have this is interesting. I'll find it and send it to you. A buddy of mine from Montana, Mike Thompson, he did this study over the last, Caleb, do you remember, was it like 30 years? Where he took all of the first round quarterback draft picks and then separated them into categories of like that Hall of Famer, really panned out, so-so, absolute bust. And it was amazing. For every Peyton Manning that you had 3 Ryan Leafs. It was amazing the number of busts that you have. I mean, Patrick Mahomes obviously would be a huge exception to that. So I don't know, but I've just over the years become skeptical about how easy it is to spot exceptional NFL talent when looking at a college player and then drafting based on what you're seeing.
Well, I think you actually have to watch college football in order for that to be true too. So I'll just throw that.
Yeah. I'm if that's the price I have to pay, I'm glad to sit that out.
Wow. And from what I've seen of Burrow, I'm young, and so I don't know, but he really does look like a type of guy that would succeed in the NFL. But I don't have the experience of you to have seen more guys come up and fail. But he does, just his arm and
different.
His talent.
Yeah, he just seems like a different type of quarterback, and stepping into a team that I think could surprise a lot of people, especially with the offense that they've had. Like I said, like the names that people don't even realize. I mean, Joe Mixon, I think has a case to be made for a top 10 running back in the league right now.
That's true.
So there you go, Cincinnati Bengals.
Making some noise.
Making
history, baby. Making
Hey,
history.
if we sit here and they're 10-6 in the wild card game, I'm just gonna sit back and drink my orange juice. Just pick a random drink. Pick a random drink.
Oh man.
All right,
That's
Rogers.
funny.
What you got, Rogers?
Yeah, so my hot take is not football. Dad, you mentioned optimistic Bengals fan. You know very well, every year I'm an optimistic Padres fan.
This should be good.
Now, no, this is probably not where you think it's going.
Okay.
And there's not much of a danger of this. But just as a fan perspective, let me clarify, but I do not want to win the World Series this year.
Oh my gosh! Stop it!
What
You're
I mean
lying. Nobody who's
Now-
a fan says that.
I know, and that's how I'm torn. And I've been a diehard Padres fan for so long. This is what I mean by this. This is what I mean. What I don't mean is in every game I'm going to be rooting for the Padres. If we go to the playoffs, it's not going to be rooting for them to lose. I'm going to be rooting hard for them to win every single game. Again, that's a big stretch, us going to the playoffs this year. I think we're on the trajectory. But this is why. Two main reasons. First of all, so the Padres became a team in '69, have made the playoffs 5 times in 50 years. 5 playoff appearances. Never won a World Series. We are the losingest team in the history of MLB currently.
Did you just say losingest?
Yes, in win percentage. Lowest win percentage, which is sad.
Is that bad that we're making up words from about that?
Yeah. So what my biggest the two things are: one, first of all, this is going to be a season with no fans, and so one, I would not want our first World Series to be in empty stadiums.
Oh boy!
No victory parade. No, there's no celebration of it because it's playing. How you said yourself the thing you miss most about sports is the fan reaction.
Right.
If we were to finally win a World Series and there's no one there to celebrate,
okay.
Yes. Now the second thing is I don't want to have yes.
Can I ask a question about the first reason? Because I thought that would be your first reason, because that's the thing that I immediately thought. But can I ask a question about it?
Yeah.
Is that first reason predicated upon the assumption that one day after this year, the Padres will indeed win a World Series?
I think we have a good shot to win the World Series in the upcoming. I think we will win the World Series in the 2020s.
So let me ask the same thing a different way. If you somehow knew, like if you could find this out and then have it erased from your memory so that you could experience life naturally, if you found out the Padres wouldn't win the World Series subsequent to this year, would that change your opinion about them winning this year? In other words, if it were this or nothing, because here's what I'm hearing you say is,
if it's this
man, when they finally do it, I want to just really experience it, and I don't want it to be this partial, hollow experience. But if you knew you'd never get the whole thing, would you take the partial thing?
If I knew we were never going to win, of course, yes. But it's partly on I don't want our first World Series that's thinking we have an upcoming team, and I think we're going to win within the next 10 years. The second reason being, it's a 60-game season. Mm-hmm. Rules are changed. DH. What's going to happen? Especially if it's a team like us, where we're not supposed to win. If we win, the only thing we're going to hear is cheap victory. And I don't want our only World Series victory to everyone, and even myself knowing, yeah, it was a 60-game season. We got helped by this thing, and then different players sitting out because of this. I don't want that. So I will be cheering for the Padres. It's a weird fan season. I will be rooting for the team to win, of course. And if we were to make the playoffs, I'd keep rooting for them. However, starting the season, I'd be like, my thought is, I don't want to win the World Series this year. I don't want to have this no fans discounted World Series to be our only victory.
Would you see, maybe a question for both of you, would you see whoever wins the World Series this year as sort of being a cheap, sort of an asterisk next to the victory?
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you.
And where I'd say a little bit, if we were to win the World Series, I know my argument would be the playoffs are the same and we won the playoffs.
Right.
But I do think it is the case that for a team, especially like us, that's not a team like the Dodgers or Yankees, if we were to get hot and win our, and make the playoffs or a team to win the division in 60 games, where to a clearly team that probably shouldn't have done it, I do think there's a little bit of an asterisk. But the playoffs are the same. I'm not saying, if the Dodgers win, well, no, not the Dodgers. I will say there's an asterisk.
Don't do that.
If the Cardinals,
What?
if the Cardinals were to win, because I know as a biased fan, I'm going to say it's an asterisk if the Dodgers win. But if like the Cardinals were to win, I'd be like, yeah, that's fair. They won the playoffs.
Yes, sir. We're coming.
No, I know that I'm just giving away the bias there. But so yeah, it's a bit discounted, but really the playoffs are the same. So whoever wins it has to.
Yeah. Well, and I can see in a length of the season, like I think of the NBA, I don't think there'd be any asterisks here because they played 60 games and they're playing another
65 games.
65. So I mean, that's in the end, they'll almost have played the full season.
Yeah.
The only footnote would be unless a three really key players on the top contender, like let's say the top three Lakers go down to COVID, and whoever wins, you might put an asterisk next to that because the major contender didn't have players due to the pandemic that we're facing. But other than that, it seems like it'd be totally legit.
Yeah. All right. Well,
there we
a
go.
little bit of a biased take, but I'll take it. That's fine. I'm biased too. So we want to thank Mr. Waymeyer for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure to talk to him. We already had Josh on too. We're going to have another special guest on next week, and more special guests to come as well. So continue sharing all of this. We're going to continue with the podcast, obviously, but continue sharing all of this, and we're going to move on now to Caleb's segment. This is Beyond the Numbers.
Welcome to Beyond the Numbers, and today we're going to talk about a quarterback stat. And we've done a quarterback stat before, but we did QBR. Now we're going to a new stat, yards for attempt. Yards per attempt.
Mouthful.
Yeah. So this stat is a stat I'd say is a little underrated. I don't think you hear a lot about yards per attempt just in general. However, the reason I like yards per attempt is it gives it combines a few quarterback stats together to give you kind of a bigger overall picture than if you just did yards. So, for example, it puts in your yards, but then also your completion percentage a little bit. If a guy has a high completion percentage, lower completion percentage, that really will affect your yards per attempt. And it also helps, if a guy only throws for 3,000 yards, you might just say, oh, he's, ranked way down on the yards list. But then you realize, oh, he only throws the ball, 20 times, so many times per game. And so that can kind of help you get a better picture of quarterbacks when a lot of guys see yards, oh, he threw for 5,000 yards. He also threw the ball way more than anyone else. So you can kind of see yards per attempt helps with that. So Ryan Tannehill in 2019 led the league with 9.6 yards per attempt, which is very good. He only had 2,700 pass yards approximately, which is not that much. He didn't start 16 games. I think he started 14 games. But he passed just around 230 yards a game, which is not, a whole lot. But again, that's a run first team.
Yeah.
And so
Derrick Henry.
Yeah, exactly. Pound the rock. And so his passer rating then is his passer rating a lot of times is going to correlate a lot to your yards per attempt. And he had the highest passer rating in the league as well. However, one thing you have to keep in mind is the more run first the team is, the higher a quarterback's numbers are going to be boosted like that. So if a guy is throwing for 5,000 yards, you have to realize that the defense is going to be playing pass more. When you have a guy like Derrick Henry and you're just giving him the ball, while he may lead the league in those categories, you have to realize that the defense is going to be stacking the box all the time. They're going to be playing run. So there is that balance there. But that's I think it's a good way to see just a quarterback's overall success passing the ball. How many yards do you get for every passing attempt? Now, one thing just to take a step back, if you want to look at your overall team's passing ability, a better metric to use would be net yards passing per attempt. Because what this does is it takes into account sacks and adds that as a play. So if you want to compare, let's look at the Titans last year. So that's how you can compare rushing and passing. They had 5 yards per attempt rushing, which is very good, and 7.1 net yards per attempt passing. So for every rush play they had, on average, they gained 5 yards. Every pass play they had, on average, they gained 7 yards. So that's just kind of a helpful thing. It's that you can see over 100 pass plays, they're going to be at 710 yards, 100 run plays, 500 yards. You may bring up the question, why are they a run first team then? If you're passing 2 yards per play more, then that's the other thing is you have to think about the risks that come with passing. A lot more turnovers when you're throwing the ball than you're running. Also,
especially if you can't play quarterback.
Yeah. James 30 interceptions. Then the other side is just the fact of tiring out the defense. When you've got a guy like Derrick Henry, a lot of times your passing plays off the run. And so their passing yards per attempt, net yards even, will always be higher than rushing. But a lot of times that's built off the running game. And running is just more reliable and consistent. Passing's more like 0, 0, 0, 30, which can still come to that average of 10. If you have a 30-yard pass and 2 incompletes. So that's how you think. Running is less, but more consistent. Passing is more, but it's going to be like more hit or miss and more turnovers. So that's just the way you can think. You compare net yards attempt passing, yards per carry rushing. That's how you can look at your team and see how they do. So I just thought that was kind of a helpful little tidbit and analyzing pass versus run and quarterbacks there. So yeah, there you go.
Too bad another guy like Derrick Henry won't come along in the way that he did. I mean, who knows? But Derrick Henry, there is nobody like that man. He's a beast. Thank you, Derrick Henry, once again, for being the Patriots. Let me just give my shout out to Derrick Henry. Thank you.
Or you could say, I don't know, maybe Brady beat himself by throwing a game in there.
Who knows? I mean, that's a good point, too. You never know. We love that conversation. We're going to move on to our last segment today, High Five. And we are finally getting a power rankings for the present, because we're talking about the NBA. It's starting in a week and a half. It's about time to do High Five, where we give our top 5 NBA teams heading into the Orlando bubble. Stay tuned.
Welcome, everyone, to our final segment, High Five. We're doing our top 5 NBA teams right now, and yeah, we're excited for basketball to be back. Baseball's coming back.
It's back.
It's all coming back. This is a big year. This is a very unique year in NBA.
More unique than anything in sports, I would think.
Probably. To have a season. How long is NBA? It's like 4 months or 3. Yeah. NBA's just been and now we're coming back playing 8 games, I think, and going right to playoffs.
I've already given my thoughts on that.
Yeah, this is new. So what I'm going to start us off with my number 5 NBA team right now, and that is the Toronto Raptors.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, the Toronto Raptors are my number 5 team, and I thought, how would they do without Kawhi?
Yeah,
they lose Kawhi, but the Raptors have been showing up. They're 46-18, second in the Eastern Conference, and they've just had a not necessarily one huge star like some of the other teams have, but Kyle Lowry, Van Fleet, Siakam, Serge Ibaka, some of these guys just kind of all stepped into the role pretty well. I think they played really well as a team with Kawhi, even though he was their leader. But guys were stepping up when they needed to and hitting big shots like Van Fleet. And so I think I was not sure where to put them. I think they're the number 5 team. They could have been a little bit higher. I think I was debating 4 or 5.
Higher.
I think they could have pushed for the number 4 team.
Wow.
Because I think they're a deep team. I think they're really a deep team. And you look, they're not like a home only team. You look, they played really well on the road as well. Yeah. And you think that no one's going to have a home field advantage going into this bubble.
Right.
So again, it's not a huge. I was
definitely thinking about putting them in and decided not to. I just think
they make your list.
No, they did not make my list at all. I think the loss of Kawhi is really gonna hurt them. I mean, they're a great team. Like I think that they're gonna be in this bubble and they're top 2 team in the East, like you said. So they're a good team, but
Yeah.
I couldn't put them in, especially because they're doing Eastern and Western Conference.
Yeah.
I'm touching that a little bit more. Like there's far better teams in the Western Conference than the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
For example,
there's real quick before you take that, there is an argument to be made there, and I do think, going into the playoffs, will they be? I don't know how they're going to do because they don't have that guy. They don't have Kawhi. I just think as a team with their depth and their chemistry, some of those guys haven't been together for a while. Yeah. They make my top 5. So
yeah, I mean, I think there's a case to be made, but I mean, time will tell with this being a bubble too. It's a lot different, but
yeah.
Number 5 for me, and this is one of my favorite teams going to the bubble, but I had to put them number 5 because they're not better than everybody else. Number 5 is the Utah Jazz. Utah Jazz are a top 5 team right now in the bubble. Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert. What's been lost in all this, I think, too, is Mike Conley plays for the Utah Jazz. He played for the Grizzlies and was a great point guard for them. He's now with the Jazz, and he's a good complement to Donovan Mitchell. You got Joe Ingles come off the bench, who is my favorite player. He's from Australia. I love that man. He's so great. And then you add in just other pieces that have come off the bench. You have Bogdan Bogdanovic. Let me try that again. Bogdan Bogdanovic. I still said it wrong, but he's a great shooter for them as well. And so the Utah Jazz are just a great all-around team. They're going to push in the Western Conference. There's some great Western Conference teams they're going to have to play against in the unique playoffs that we're in. But they are a great team. Rudy Gobert was the one that started all this pretty much with testing positive for the coronavirus. He's put that behind him, and they're moving forward to try to push for a championship. I'd really love to see the Utah Jazz, especially as a Warriors fan, not having a team in it really this year. I'd love to see Utah Jazz make a push even the Western Conference Finals and push another team that I'll mention later. But, I mean, the Utah Jazz, I think, are a top 5 team right now in the bubble.
Yeah. What's the relationship right now with Gobert and
Mitchell?
There's some stuff going on.
There was some tension going on. They put it all behind them. I mean, when it's your business, when it's your job, and you're making money playing basketball, you put it behind you. Now, we've already touched on from a biblical worldview how those things can get skewed and torn. So I would have to believe that they have not reconciled it the right way, obviously, and both being unbelievers. But from a business standpoint, you need to be with your coworkers, so to speak, your teammates, and push forward in a way that you can be successful. And I think that they are a successful team when you have a guy like Donovan Mitchell.
And they're just so talented. They're very talented. I think they'll work it out. It's not. I don't think that they'll let them. Yeah. They'll let that affect their chances. So my number 4 team is the Celtics, the Boston Celtics. Yeah. You want to talk another team that maybe doesn't quite have the superstar like other teams do?
Jason Tatum's coming.
Jason
Tatum is coming. He's coming.
Only 21. They're young. They've got Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward again. I think Kemba Walker is a really good fit. Mm-hmm. They just, again, a similar argument as the Raptors, but even more so. I think they just have that team chemistry. A lot of those guys have been together for a little while. Kemba Walker knew, but he's fitting in, and they know how to play. Brad Stevens is a great coach.
Great coach.
They could make some noise in the playoffs. I don't know exactly. I don't know what they'll do, but I think they're my number 4 team. So
let's just move on to number 3. I got Celtics at number 4 too.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
Jason Tatum is coming, guys. He's up there right now. I think he's a top 10 player, maybe even top 5 player in the league right now. Jason Tatum, he's a stud. So I got nothing to add to that. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's back to me.
That's back to you. There you go.
Yeah. Well, my number 3 team is the LA Clippers.
Okay.
And so,
interesting.
Yeah. Kawhi, Paul George. They've got the defense. I think of they could win it all this year for sure. Mm-hmm. And
Patrick Beverly.
Yeah, Patrick Beverly. They've got the stud defenders. I think they can score on the offensive end, but more than anything, they've got those defenders, which can be big. I think they have the durability to fight in the playoffs. When playoff comes is different than regular season. Yeah. And I think they have the type of team that's built for the playoffs. Kawhi has just had that success.
Unfortunately. Still
unfortunately for you.
I hate you, Kawhi Leonard.
So, they're my number 3 team, but I could definitely see them winning it all this year.
Let's just keep rolling. Number 3, LA Clippers. They're a great team. They're not better than the top 2 teams that I'm assuming we both have, but the Clippers are a great team, great all around. I mean, Kawhi and Paul George, like a lot of people forget that those are two superstars on the same team. And they're going to be great.
Specifically, they could give the Lakers problems because Paul George and Kawhi are historically great one-on-one defenders and guys that can match up with LeBron.
I mean, you're not wrong, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, we'll see. And that leads me to my number 2 team, which is the other LA team, the Lakers.
Ooh,
they're my number 2 team. They did not make my number 1.
Okay.
I mean, they could be my number 1. I could see them winning it all very easily.
But you don't.
They're not my number. Yeah, they're not as a team. They're not my number 1. LeBron James, Anthony Davis. That's all I have to say. I mean, that's a fourth, right?
It's a great tandem. Great enough even to be number 1, which they are for me.
They are.
Yeah, and the Bucks are number 2 for me.
Okay.
The Milwaukee Bucks are number 2. I think that will be the NBA Finals this year. The Bucks and the Lakers.
Yep.
But the Bucks
finals.
That's going to be a great finals. The Milwaukee Bucks. And I had to look at the roster again just to be reminded of how great they are. Giannis Hakuna Matata, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Eric Bledsoe, who's kind of plays their point guard, Wesley Matthews, who was a sharpshooter for the Mavericks, and they got to the Bucks somehow. Robin Lopez, and then they added another shooter who I'm missing right now. Do you have it pulled up?
Kyle Korver.
Kyle Korver. They added Kyle Korver. Like if that's not like enough of a force.
Like, you didn't even mention Chris Middleton.
And Chris Middleton.
Like just to throw that in.
There are so many players that are good, but they are not better than the Lakers, in my opinion. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, which you already said, enough said. Alex Caruso, the dude can ball. He's like, for a white guy, he's got bounce. Like, let's just be honest. He can get up. Like, it's crazy. I love watching him. Again, not having a horse in the race.
He's 35.
Like he's got the balding hair and stuff. It's like I don't know what's going on with him. But it's like it's awesome. But not having a horse in the race, I would love to see the Lakers win it again. I don't have a problem with LeBron now that he's left the Cavaliers. Kind of like put it behind you. I already mentioned Hakuna Matata. Put the past behind you. But LeBron James, Anthony Davis, love to see them win a ring. Anthony Davis is not one, doesn't have a ring yet. It'd be great to see that happen. So, I mean, there's lots of different stuff that can happen with that. But they're not your number 1. You got the Bucks.
They're not. But again, it's right here. You know, like I'm not mad at you putting them number 1.
You have them in the finals as well?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Then that, if it happens, would be a fantastic final.
So right now, and I was asking some other friends who I know about this. Right now, who would you have winning today? Now, it's subject to change, obviously, depending on like how they adjust to the bubble. Who do you have winning, Lakers, Bucks?
I'd say Lakers. I mean,
okay.
I don't know. Like, we'd have to see how Giannis does in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part of it.
That's true. Because he shut him down. Kawhi Leonard shut him down last year.
Yeah, but then, you know, the Lakers don't have Kawhi.
It's true. They don't have LeBron and Anthony Davis and Alex Caruso, who's a dog on defense. So I would have the Lakers winning. I think it could go 7. I think the Lakers will finish it in 6. LeBron finally having Anthony Davis. I mean, Kyrie Irving was good when they won with the Cavs. Again, still not over it. But when you have someone like Anthony Davis, it's a whole other animal. And I think that they can finish that off in 6. So I would have the Lakers winning right now. Obviously, there's a lot of different stuff that can happen. Utah Jazz can make a move and come in. Right? I mean, who knows? You never know.
Everything's going to be different. It's bubble basketball. We don't know what's going to happen.
We don't know what's going to happen, but we do know that sports are back. And you and I are both ecstatic for that. So much so that next week we're going to be talking about more current sports coming back. We're going to our top 5 MLB teams heading into the season. And we'll do it with a special guest. We won't say who it is yet, but we're going to continue to have people on. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in for another episode. First one, we're in the same location. May not be the last one, depending on how everything else shakes out, but we are excited to continue putting out this podcast. We got some more content dropping. We're both in the same place, so we've been doing some wiffle ball, basketball. There's lots of different fun videos, live reactions to things, Jordan LeBron debate, uncut. I mean, we got tons of stuff coming for you guys. Should be a lot of fun. So continue to give us some more stuff to react to, more stuff to comment on, and give our thoughts on, whether it be sports and scripture, whether it be a top 5 list, whether it be a Babylon Bee article, or just different things like that. We love reacting to those things. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor for the podcast. You can listen or watch it, and then we're going to continue putting out content. So there's so much stuff happening. we're thankful to be a part of it. Thankful to the Lord to do it. So thanks for tuning in to another episode. I'm Caldwell.
I'm Caleb.
We'll talk to you guys later. God bless.